When Caitlin Clark arrived at the prestigious Annika Pro-Am in 2025, the entire golf world shifted overnight. The LPGA, already growing steadily, found itself at the center of a cultural explosion. Caitlin didn't just bring fans, she brought an audience that stretched beyond the sport's traditional boundaries. The LPGA had to completely overhaul its broadcast plan due to the overwhelming demand. A basketball player had touched a golf club, and suddenly, women's golf was trending worldwide. Cameras followed her every swing, ticket sales surged, and sponsors flooded in. What the LPGA understood immediately was that Caitlin wasn't just an athlete, she was an event. Her presence alone carried the power to redefine public interest, and they treated her accordingly. While the LPGA embraced this moment with gratitude and excitement, rolling out red carpets and cameras, the WNBA stayed quiet. Deafeningly quiet. Not a single official post. No acknowledgement that their own superstar was drawing global attention to women's athletics. It was as if they couldn't stand to watch someone within their ranks succeed on a level that made their management look small-minded. Meanwhile, LPGA officials and players couldn't contain their enthusiasm. They posted behind-the-scenes footage, shared photos with her, analyzed her swing like she was Tiger Woods in his prime, and publicly thanked her for the exposure she brought to their sport. Every fairway Caitlin walked became a parade route, lined with fans who had never before cared about golf, but now suddenly did because of her. Contrast that with what was happening behind closed doors in WNBA circles. While Caitlin was being celebrated in another league, players like A'ja Wilson and others were busy liking cryptic posts and vague messages about media bias and undeserved attention. The envy was unmistakable. Their subtle shots, couched in complaints about fairness and recognition, weren't fooling anyone. It was the same tired pattern that has plagued the WNBA for years. Athletes attacking each other instead of working together to grow the game. What makes the whole thing even more striking is how the LPGA handled Caitlin's participation. They didn't hide her. They didn't act like she was intruding on their sport. They rolled out the red carpet because they understood something fundamental. When one woman rises, they all rise. Caitlin Clark's inclusion wasn't a threat. It was an opportunity. Her influence expanded the audience for women's sports as a whole. People who came to watch her play golf were suddenly discovering LPGA stars they'd never heard of before. That's how sports evolve. But instead of seeing that lesson, some WNBA players were too busy competing for validation that Caitlin never even asked for. The irony is painful. Caitlin didn't beg for this attention. She didn't demand it. She didn't call the LPGA asking for a spotlight. She was invited because of what she represents: excellence, humility, and the ability to unite fans across sports. She played golf for charity, smiled through interviews, and brought more eyes to women's sports in one weekend than the WNBA has in entire seasons. But instead of celebrating her, her own league's players treated her like an outsider. The LPGA, on the other hand, recognized a once-in-a-generation opportunity. They immediately saw that Caitlin Clark could bridge audiences: basketball fans, golf fans, young girls dreaming of professional sports. They didn't worry that she'd overshadow their own stars. They understood that her presence elevated everyone. As a result, their event broke records. Social media engagement tripled, television ratings skyrocketed, and local golf programs reported spikes in interest from young women inspired by Caitlin's appearance. It was a masterclass in marketing and collaboration. Meanwhile, back in WNBA land, the jealousy simmered. A'ja Wilson, known for her dominance on the court, couldn't resist the urge to shade the moment indirectly. Without ever naming Caitlin, she posted about how some people have to work harder for recognition, while others get handed everything. The timing couldn't have been more transparent. Her teammates and followers piled on, liking posts that complained about overhyped players and media. Favorites! The bitterness was so obvious, it nearly overshadowed the league's ongoing season. It's a sad reflection of where women's basketball stands in 2025. While the LPGA was capitalizing on cross-sport synergy, the WNBA remained stuck in an outdated mindset that treats success like a zero-sum game, believing that attention for Caitlin means less attention for everyone else. In reality, the opposite is true. Caitlin's rise has brought millions of new eyes to women's basketball, revitalized attendance, and increased merchandise sales across the league. But instead of embracing that, some of its biggest stars are too insecure to see the bigger picture. The data speaks for itself. The Annika Pro-Am featuring Caitlin Clark generated more engagement for women's golf than the LPGA's last 3 major tournaments combined. Broadcasters scrambled to expand coverage. Golf Channel had to extend airtime to accommodate the influx of viewers. The LPGA immediately thanked Caitlin publicly for bringing this new wave of fans. Meanwhile, the WNBA still couldn't bring itself to acknowledge her success at all. It was as if they were afraid to admit that the player they've often underappreciated had become the biggest catalyst for women's sports since Serena Williams. What makes this entire situation even more tragic is that Caitlin's success benefits everyone, whether they like her or not. Her impact brings attention to women's athletics in general, opening doors for sponsorships, partnerships, and growth across sports. But jealousy blinds people. Aja Wilson and her circle's passive-aggressive responses only alienate fans and reinforce the perception that the WNBA is divided and petty. They're not just hurting Caitlin, they're hurting the sport itself. Meanwhile, the LPGA continues to soar, riding the wave of Caitlin's influence with gratitude and professionalism. Players posed with her, thanked her, and publicly celebrated the energy she brought to their tour. They understood the moment, recognized its importance, and capitalized on it. They didn't see her as competition. They saw her as an ally. That's the difference between a league that's thriving and one that's still struggling to find its footing. And perhaps the most revealing part of all came after the tournament. The LPGA released a statement thanking Caitlin for inspiring a new generation, noting that her presence brought families and young fans who had never attended before. They talked about how she made golf feel fresh, exciting, and accessible. In contrast, the WNBA's silence was deafening. Instead of celebrating a player who was bringing positive attention to women's sports, they allowed jealousy to define the narrative. At this point, it's undeniable, Caitlin Clark has transcended the WNBA. She's no longer just a player. She's a movement. Her reach extends beyond basketball, beyond sports even. She's shaping culture, redefining what it means to be a female athlete in the modern era. And that's precisely why some can't handle her success. They're not upset because she's undeserving. They're upset because she's changing the game in ways they can't control. The truth is, Caitlin Clark is doing exactly what every league dreams of, a single athlete expanding the boundaries of their sport. The LPGA recognized that immediately and embraced it. The WNBA, however, continues to squander the opportunity by letting bitterness overshadow brilliance. As 2025 moves forward, the lesson couldn't be clearer. Women's sports thrive when collaboration replaces competition, when unity replaces envy, and when talent is celebrated instead of feared. Caitlin Clark didn't embarrass anyone. She simply revealed who was willing to evolve and who wasn't. The LPGA walked away stronger. The WNBA walked away exposed. If you believe women's sports deserve unity instead of rivalry, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe right now. Because this story is far from over. The LPGA has just rewritten the playbook for how to grow a sport, and the WNBA is at a crossroads. Will they finally learn to celebrate their biggest star, or keep letting pride hold them back? The next chapter of this saga could redefine the future of women's athletics forever, and you won't want to miss what happens next.